take a roll call to ensure that we have a quorum present.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, when I call your name, please state your name. Nancy Allen.
Here.
Stan Ballone. Dave Berry. Benjamin Bitter. Walter Bouchard. Kim Butler.
Kim Butler's here.
Derek Castaneda.
Derek Castaneda is here.
Peter Margoliner. Aaron Chavez.
Aaron Chavez is here.
Beverly Chanowski. Beverly Chanowski. Tim Connor. Michael Denby. Scott DeBias.
Scott DeBias is here.
Michelle Kamikawa.
Michelle Kamikawa is here.
Thank you. Robert Forrest. Elizabeth Foster.
Liz is here.
Thank you. Rhonda Humbles. Hondo Judd. Spencer Camps. Martin Lucero. Martin Lucero. Joseph Martini.
I'm here. Martin Lucero is here.
Thank you. Joseph Martini.
Joseph Martini is here.
Thank you. Kristen Watt.
Kristen Watt is here.
Thank you. Amanda McGinnis. J.C. Porter.
JC Porter's here.
Thank you. Mario Saldamando.
Present.
Thank you. Megan Sheldon.
Megan Sheldon is present.
Thank you. Ramona Simpson.
Ramona's here.
Thank you. Susie Stevens. Edward Stillings.
Ed's here.
Steve, thank you. Steve Trussell. Christina Hobbs.
Christina's here.
Thank you. Kai Umeda.
Kai Umeda is present.
Thank you. Amy Murray. Amy Murray. Michelle Wilson. Michelle Wilson. Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Thank you. Now that we have a quorum present, I'll call this meeting of the MAG Air Quality Technical Advisory Committee to order. Please remember that mute your phone or when you're not speaking. At this time, we'll have a call to audience. An opportunity will be provided to members of the public to provide input through written comment to the Air Quality Technical Advisory Committee on items that are not on the agenda that are within the jurisdiction of MAG, or on items on the agenda for discussion but not for action. Members of the public are asked to submit written comments related to this meeting through the MAG website at azmag.gov/comment and indicate for which meeting the comment is intended. Comments may be sent at any time leading up to the meeting, but must be received at least 1 hour prior to the posted start time of the meeting. Comments received prior to the deadline will be read aloud during the meeting. Comments must not exceed 3 minutes in length. A total of 15 minutes will be provided for the call to audience agenda item, unless an Air Quality Technical Advisory Committee requests an exception to this limit. Please note that comments received for the agenda items posted for action will be read at the time the item is heard. MAG staff, have we received any public comments?
Yes, Mr. Chair, we received one comment for agenda item number 6. I will read it now. Related to item 6 on the January the 28th, 2021 agenda. As part of the work being done to determine how COVID-19 is impacting traffic, is MAG looking at the number of crashes that are occurring relative to the decrease in traffic and increase in speed. NTHSA is reporting an increase in crashes and fatalities in 2020, even though overall traffic has decreased, end quote. On January the 22nd, 2021, MAG responded to this comment as follows, quote, MAG does not have the information you are seeking regarding crash fatalities. We recommend that you reach out to the Arizona Department of Transportation for that data, end quote.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to our item number 3, which is approval of the October 22nd, 2020 meeting minutes. Could we have a motion and a second? And please state your name when you make those motions. Thank you.
Martin Lucero, City Surprise, move to approve.
Thank you.
This is Megan Sheldon. I second.
Thank you. At this time, we'll do a roll call vote for approval.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, when I call your name, please state your vote. Nancy Allen,
Yes.
Stan Ballone, Dave Barry, Benjamin Bitter, Walter Bouchard, Kim Butler,
Approve.
Derek Castaneda,
Aye.
Peter Margoliner, Aaron Chavez,
Aye.
Beverly Chanowski,
Yes.
Tim Connor,
Aye.
Michael Denby, Scott DeBias,
Aye.
Michelle Kamikawa, Robert Forrest, Elizabeth Foster,
Aye.
Rhonda Humbles, Hondo Judd, Spencer Camps, Martin Lucero,
Aye.
Joseph Martini,
Aye.
Kristen Watt,
Aye.
Amanda McGinnis, J.C. Porter,
Aye.
Mario Saldamando,
Aye.
Megan Sheldon,
Aye.
Ramona Simpson,
Aye.
Edward Stillings. I'm sorry, I skipped that one. Steve Trussell.
Yeah, we're non-voting, thanks.
Steve Trussell, Christina Hobbs,
I wasn't at the meeting, so I'll abstain.
Kai Umeda,
Aye.
Amy Murray,
Aye.
Michelle Wilson, Mr. Chair, we have 18 ayes and 1 abstention.
All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to item number 4 on our agenda, the Arizona Thrives Initiative. Patrick Graham from Arizona Thrives will give that presentation. Thank you.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, we have a slide presentation I was going to run through real quickly. There we go. Okay. All right, thank you. Good morning, or good afternoon, I guess it is. So a little over 2 years ago, Prop 127 was brought in Arizona. It was to put clean energy standards in the state constitution. It led to becoming the most costly ballot measure ever in the history of Arizona, with over $60 million spent for and against. The divisiveness of that measure led me and some others to think that it was time for Arizona to begin to chart its own path for clean energy in Arizona. So we let's see. Take next slide. So we brought together a small group of people. Kirk Adams, who had just stepped down as the governor's chief of staff, Bill Post, former CEO of Pinnacle West, Gary Dirks from ASU, and Karen Peters from the city of Phoenix. And we began to put together what we would call a framework for this. And one of the things that became very evident when we started was that the interplay between reducing carbon emissions and clean air, because the single largest source of carbon emissions, particularly in urban areas and actually across the country, is through transportation. So we kind of expanded the scope to include clean air, and we wanted to do it in a way that ensured that we had a healthy economy as well as healthy communities. So we set about convening a bunch of experts over the period of the next 6 or 9 months, some of whom were associated with MAG and various communities in the state. Next slide. We came up with a framework. We're not going to go through this with the time that we have, but we can make this available to you. We identified kind of 4 key levers for clean air and 4 for clean energy, and some of the areas of opportunity. We put a report out that was released in February of this year that goes through each of those levers, talking about the challenges and opportunities and how they could contribute. For those of you who are really familiar with these things, none of this may seem particularly new to you, but it was the only place where we could see that anybody had tried to pull all of this together. And we included in there everything from, as you can see, from mobility to electric vehicles to dealing with issues like tree cover and urban heat island. Next slide. We took that information and that report to the governor's office and discussed it with them, and they agreed that these were important issues, but at the time were not prepared to take it up and move forward with it. So met with leaders from across the state, heads of companies, mayors, county supervisors, corporation commission, and decided that to move this forward, there was broad agreement that it should be moved forward, and it should be done in an inclusive way, a statewide effort. So next slide. We put together a statewide task force, which included MAG, included Eric Anderson from MAG, all 3 of the major utilities, plus the rural co-ops. You had business interests, community interests, universities, all involved, as well as advocate groups and other organizations. Next. What that group produced over the past year was made a decision that what we really needed to do is come together as an alliance, a broad group of interests that would help move these issues forward in Arizona in a way that worked for Arizona. And so we identified some roles for the alliance, including helping build agreement on what are the priority pathways to move forward. aligning policy practices. You can read them there, including the development of a dashboard and progress indicators, which is being developed through the University of Arizona. Next slide. One of the things the task force did was to develop a set of goals and guiding principles. The clean air goal was essentially to meet or exceed or outperform, I guess we came to say, the air quality standards set under the Clean Air Act. The target date of 2025 was, it was really put in there as a placeholder for, I believe, at least in this airshed, that in 2025, if we don't reach those by then, that triggers the next level of restrictions from the federal government. And then the clean energy goal was an economy-wide net zero neutrality by 2050. And the idea there is to take actions to begin to put Arizona on a path to achieving that. And recognizing that these decisions are made in corporate boardrooms, they're made in meetings like these, they're made in city councils, they're made in any number of places, corporation commission, that the alliance or the task force developed a set of principles to ensure that we could share those broadly. So as decisions are made, that people could consider principles that considered everything from affordability and reliability to equity and access. Next slide. While that work was going on, we convened three groups of people that represented sort of knowledgeable people across the spectrum around three different areas: how we power our economy, where we live and work, and how we move. The first group was really focused on, included the utilities and others interested in, how we actually generate the power. The second group focused on, our urban, our commercial and residential development and communities. And then the third group focused on issues related to transportation. One of the things that was important for the Alliance recognized is that while some of this work can occur within a particular area, that most of it impacted other areas. So if you're trying to advance electric vehicles, the charging stations for those really, whose responsibility are those, and what are the impacts of increased electrification on, the gas tax and transportation system. So there's the transition to clean energy and clean air is going to basically affect the entire economy in one form or another. Next slide. So what we are in the process of doing now is building the Alliance you see in front of you a list of the early signers onto the Alliance. And what I'm doing here today is kind of, I guess, one of the steps in trying to get MAG to join the Alliance. There's dozens of entities that are in the various process of approval for joining. I just got off the phone with PayPal just before jumping on this call. So there's a lot of folks we're working with that aren't on the list yet that we've met with, but this is our first meeting with MAG. So I will stop there and open it up for questions.
Thanks. Are there any questions?
This is Mario from the city of Goodyear.
Yes.
Just a great presentation, by the way. I apologize if I missed it. Is there a work plan, a short-term, long-term work plan?
Yeah, right now, yes, a good question. We have developed one out of the Alliance that begins to outline kind of what the next steps. So one of the things you may be wondering is why the Nature Conservancy is doing this. And the reason was somebody needed to do it. So I volunteered to help convene and move this effort forward. But the goal of Arizona Thrives is to set it up as a separate entity that will work through partnerships. So what we're in the process of doing right now is standing that up, creating an advisory board and a leadership council for the Alliance. And a couple of examples of things that we're looking at right now is putting together indicators for the different sectors of the economy, and then that can tie into the dashboard. Another area is with the potential for additional stimulus coming out from Congress, is how could we better align our efforts in Arizona between communities, business, and others to ensure that we get our fair share, that if there are projects that we can broadly agree on, that they become priorities with our delegation. We're also talking about how this kind of effort could help support resiliency planning by communities as they think about some of the impacts of warming climate or water security.
Great. Thank you very much.
Mm-hmm.
Are there any other questions? All right. Our action on this item is to bring a motion forward to recommend support for the Arizona Thrives initiative. Could we have someone formally bring that motion forward?
This is Tim Connor, so moved.
Thanks, Tim. Do you have a second?
Second, this is Mario Saldamando from Goodyear.
Thank you, Mario. All right, at this time we'll have a roll call vote. Lisa, would you please complete that for us?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members of the committee, when I call your name, please state your vote. Nancy Allen?
Yes.
Kim Butler?
Approve.
Derek Castaneda?
Aye.
Aaron Chavez?
Aye.
Beverly Chanowski?
Abstained.
Tim Connor?
Aye.
Scott Tobias?
Aye.
Michelle Kamikawa?
Abstain.
Elizabeth, thank you. Elizabeth Foster?
Abstain.
Thank you. Martin Lucero?
Aye.
Thank you. Joseph Martini?
Aye.
Thank you. Kristen Watt? Kristen Watt?
Aye.
Thank you. JC Porter?
Aye.
Thank you. Mario Saldamando?
Aye.
Thank you. Megan Sheldon?
Aye.
Thank you. Ramona Simpson?
Aye.
Thank you. Christina Hobbs?
Approve.
Thank you. Kayumeta?
Abstain.
Thank you. Amy Murray,
Aye.
thank you. Michelle Wilson, Mr. Chair, we have 16 ayes and 4 abstentions.
All right, thank you very much. Thank you, Patrick, for that presentation.
Well, thank you for your support. We greatly appreciate it. And if you have any other questions, please let us know. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, we'll move on to our next agenda item, which is the draft MAG 2019 inventory of unpaved roads. And Randy Sedlak from Maricopa Association of Governments will give that presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Following is an update on the status of unpaved roads in the Maricopa County PM10 non-attainment area. Next slide. In 2007, the MAG Regional Council directed MAG to develop an unpaved roads inventory for the non-attainment area. The primary use of the inventory is to track progress in eliminating unpaved roads. The initial inventory was completed in 2009. During the development of the 2009 inventory, MAG GIS staff analyzed aerial images to identify unpaved roads and then drafted unpaved road maps. These maps were sent to MAG member agencies for review. MAG member agencies then sent back these maps with revisions, and MAG GIS staff incorporated the revisions in the 2009 inventory. Next slide. This slide shows the steps used to update the year 2019 inventory. The unpaved road inventory was updated with unpaved roads data from MAG member agencies using tracking spreadsheets, CMAQ and TIP paving data, and aerial image analysis and GIS analysis by MAG GIS staff. Next slide. Alleys, agricultural roads, canal roads, closed unpaved roads, easements, restricted access roads, and utility roads were not included in the inventory because they have little traffic or the public generally does not have access to these roads. Next slide. This slide lists the number of miles of public unpaved roads and private unpaved roads in the non-attainment area in year 2019. It also lists the number of miles of unpaved roads for cities and towns, counties, native nations, and federal land. From the inventory, it was estimated that in year 2019, there were 328 miles of public unpaved roads, 957 miles of private unpaved roads, for a total of 1,285 miles of unpaved roads in the non-attainment area. Next slide. The total miles of public unpaved roads decreased 285 miles when compared to the 2009 inventory. The total miles of private unpaved roads decreased 314 miles when compared to the 2009 inventory. The decrease in public unpaved roads was due to paving, closing, blockage, and reclassification of these roads, and the decrease in private unpaved roads was due to paving and reclassification of these roads. In 2011, a MAG contractor conducted an intensive field survey of private unpaved roads in the non-attainment area to identify private unpaved roads that had been misclassified. For example, some canal roads had been misclassified as private unpaved roads. These roads were removed from the inventory. Next slide. This map shows a location of public unpaved roads and PM10 monitors in the non-attainment area. Public unpaved roads are denoted as red lines and PM10 monitors as red circles on the map. Review of the map shows that most of the public unpaved roads are on the periphery of the non-attainment area and are not located near PM10 monitors. Next slide. This map shows a location of private unpaved roads and PM10 monitors in the non-attainment area. Private unpaved roads are denoted as blue lines and PM10 monitors as red circles on the map. Review of the map shows that most of the private unpaved roads are also on the periphery of the non-attainment area and are not located near the PM10 monitors. Next slide. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This concludes my presentation.
Thank you, Randy. Are there any questions? All right, thank you very much. We'll move on to agenda item number 6, which is the update on how COVID-19 is affecting traffic and emissions. Matt Poppin and Taeju Shin from MAG will give that presentation.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. This is Matt Poppin speaking. I'll be giving the first half of this presentation, and then my colleague Taeju Shin will be giving the latter half. So we're providing today an update on how the COVID-19 impacts and restrictions affected traffic and emissions in the Maricopa region. Next slide, please. So MAG continues to track the impacts of COVID-19 restrictions on traffic on a dedicated web page. And this is updated pretty regularly. So if you click on that link, you can see since about March, we have been tracking the impacts of COVID-19 on traffic. Our first presentation that we gave on this was back on May 21st to the committee. I just want to summarize what we found at that point. At that point, we found that the restrictions resulted in less congestion. There were higher average speeds on both the freeways and the arterials, which results in less delay for commuters. The average weekday traffic volume decreased to as low as about 63% of March 1 levels, which we were considering our baseline normal levels. And that occurred in the second week of April. At that time, COVID-19 hadn't affected freight deliveries. It was still consistent heavy truck traffic that was being observed. Next slide, please. So since May 2020, we wanted to update you on what has been happening since that time. Our current data, we have data on traffic and speed volume through January 8th, 2021. And here's the overall findings. We continue to see less congestion. We still have higher average speeds on freeways and arterials. However, after August 2020, freeway speeds did begin to decrease as compared to March through August 2020, as traffic volumes increased with people returning to work sites. Overall, average weekday traffic volumes are still lower than the pre-COVID-19 volumes, but they're close now to 90% of normal levels, and that is as of January 8th, 2021. Since May 2020, when we last gave you information, we have seen an increase in heavy truck traffic. As of January 8th, the traffic has increased to 122% of March 1st levels. Next slide, please. So here are some of the graphs of that data I just summarized. This is the speed data. So orange bars represent speeds in 2020, blue bars and speeds in 2019. So you can see that throughout the year, both on arterials and freeways and both in the morning and the afternoon, speeds continue to be quicker in 2020 than they were in 2019, and pretty consistently pretty quicker, although the fastest speeds were seen in the earlier months of April through June. Next slide. This is a measure of traffic delay. It's the number of hours, cumulative hours that are spent in delay. So lower numbers means less delay. You can see that compared to our baseline of March 1st, 2020, traffic congestion has remained noticeably lower. even with some increase in traffic volume since COVID-19 restrictions were in place. Next slide, please. So this is a weekly measurement of the average weekday traffic volume in Maricopa County. So you can see the low occurred in that second week of April, 61% of our March 1st levels. And then if you look at the data through January 8th, we are at 90% of that level. And we have roughly been at 90% according to this graphic since about September. And it has stayed roughly around that 90% figure. Next slide, please. Our last traffic slide has to do with heavy truck traffic. So you can see somewhat of a steady increase in heavy truck traffic. We know several people have anecdotally observed a lot more travel, people ordering things online and such. So this is not unexpected necessarily. So it reached a high of 130% of the March 1st levels in that week of December 14th through December 18th. And currently through January 8th, we're showing 122% of March 1st levels. All right, next slide, please. So in addition to tracking traffic data, we were also tracking emissions data. And we were primarily tracking emissions of nitrogen dioxide, which are one of the primary pollutants that's made by vehicle traffic. And we looked at satellite data to see the impact on nitrogen dioxide emissions since the COVID-19 restrictions were put in place. So the left half of this graphic shows data from 2019 for the period of March 16th through April 21st. And the right half of the graphic shows data that's for that same period in 2020. So early on in the restrictions, we did see a pretty noticeable decrease in nitrogen dioxide emissions of almost 17% for that period. Next slide, please. As we continued to track it, we saw both increases and decreases depending on the period looked at. And we did highlight this in our May presentation to the committee, that during this period of April 22nd through roughly June 7th, nitrogen dioxide emissions actually increased despite the restrictions due to COVID-19. So we had a 11% increase in this period. Next slide, please. Continuing through kind of the middle portion of the summer, this is June 8th through July 24th, we see a decrease. So we're seeing both fluctuations of increases and decreases, just showing the complexity of nitrogen dioxide emissions being related to both weather and transport and a variety of factors, not just direct emissions from vehicles in the region. So for this period, we saw a decrease again of roughly 10%. And I have one more slide on emissions. Next slide. So for the rest of the relatively ozone period, sort of the latter summer months, it was relatively constant. We saw a decrease of roughly about 3%. So this just shows the complexity of nitrogen dioxide emissions as they were observed over our region. Okay, next slide. So because of that, what we saw here locally was really highlighted, both not here in Arizona, but across our nation and across the globe. In our May presentation, we gave you this link to this first article. Traffic is way down because of lockdown, but air pollution, not so much. This was presented by National Public Radio, so we're providing you that link again. But since then, the situation has continued to be complex, and we wanted to give you links to two other articles, which are pretty interesting as well. One's from Chemical and Engineering News, talking about the strange effects on air pollution, and then one from Bloomberg City Lab News as well. asking the effects on air quality due to COVID. And the next couple of slides, I put together some quotes from those articles to look through. So we put these up here for your benefit. That first quote we had in our first presentation, talking about how traffic decreased around the country about 40%, but ozone pollution barely decreased when compared to prior observations. The second quote talks about a study from satellite data at more than 10,000 monitors around the world. And that study found that on average, air quality improved relative to the same period in 2019. However, that same study found that even as nitrogen oxide emissions plummeted 60% and fine particulate matter dropped 31% around the globe, global average ozone actually went up slightly around the world. And then lastly, this quote from that Chemical and Engineering News, the researcher says it's not so linear. When human emissions go down, she says, pollutants like ozone that form in the air can actually go up in non-straightforward ways. In fact, dramatic cuts in primary emissions seem to have triggered severe air pollution events. In northern China and in the Los Angeles area, for example, the strictest lockdown period saw unusually intense ozone spikes. So this just highlights the fact of what we were seeing throughout the year, that there was not this direct link between COVID-19 restrictions on traffic and reductions in air pollution. Next slide, please. Just a couple more quotes, again, highlighting this. This is from the Bloomberg News article. Unraveling the connections between local lockdowns and air quality is not as simple as comparing readings from month to month or year to year. Researchers must take into account the impact of weather, regulatory changes, and emissions from abroad. Forthcoming studies will go deep into the chemical makeup of the air. It is true that this period has stimulated a lot of research and activity into what happened. So I think we'll continue to learn more as studies continue to study this period. And then lastly, in regards to particulate pollution, research from the University of Washington didn't find a clear story. California's levels steadily rose during the stay-at-home period, while those in New York State stayed remarkably consistent even as traffic and economic patterns changed with lockdown restrictions. That said, research author shows that the complexity of particulates means if we really want to get pollution down, it might take more than just stay-at-home orders. So we just wanted to highlight again, I encourage you to look at those articles. There's a lot of good information in there. Just highlight the complex relationship, and that was definitely seen in our region as well. Next slide. So to recap again, what we shared with you as to why we had some of those early summer high ozone episodes. This was in the April 28th through May 6th period when lockdowns were happening pretty consistently across the West and in our region. The reasons for those early summer high ozone episodes were we had meteorological conditions that were really conducive to ozone formation, high air pressure and temperature and stagnant air mass and strong sunlight. We also observed that background ozone increased due to transport from California and Mexico, as well as East Asia transport, and biogenic VOC emissions increased. These are emissions from vegetation and plants because of the warmer temperatures. We also observed that the photochemical reactions between NOx and VOC really affected how ozone was formed. It's not really clear if reductions or increases in those particular primary pollutants, how that actually really affects the ozone that is ultimately measured at the monitors. And then lastly, local emissions contributions to ozone for the period were not really clear. They still really aren't clear due to limited data and because they're usually some of these other earlier points have more of effect than the local emissions do. So next slide, please. So what did we observe since that period? Well, as you all are probably aware and can remember, the mid to late summer high ozone episodes were dominated by episodes linked to wildfires. 2020 was a record-setting wildfire season, particularly in California, Colorado, and Oregon. This image here is from August 2020, and all of that light brown colored, what may look like clouds, that's all smoke and particulates from wildfires. So you can see the massive extent that stretched across California, Nevada, Idaho, Montana, Arizona, and New Mexico, all over. So the months with the highest wildfire activity were August and September, and in our region, that's when we had our highest ozone concentrations. We had some really high ozone concentrations during those periods that were associated with these wildfires. And because of that, the wildfire impacts likely overwhelmed the impacts of any of the COVID restrictions that were in place in the later months of the ozone season. So next slide, please. So with that, I'd like to hand the presentation over to our modeling manager, Taiju Shin, and he can give you a little more detail again into the ozone season as a whole and what we observed. Taiju?
Hi, thank you, Matt. Last May, I made a presentation regarding, the COVID-19 impact on ozone concentrations in Maricopa County during the earlier summer of last year. So today, I will discuss about the COVID-19 impact on the entire year of ozone season last year. Also, the Matt briefly mentioned about wildfire impact on ozone last year. As he mentioned, we had the widespread and the severe wildfires in Maricopa Nonattainment area, so we couldn't have much benefit of COVID-19 related emission reductions. And also in April and May last year, we also had very high East Asia air pollution transport impact. As we can see in this figure, left side figure is East Asia transport in 2019. Air pollutions transported from the East Asia reached west coast of United States. Compared to 2020, it's very small. But in 2020, this East Asia transport is much higher than last year. So because of this higher East Asia transport to U.S. West Coast area and finally, transported to Maricopa County. So we couldn't have much benefit of COVID-19 related emission reductions on ozone last April and May. Next slide, please. Yeah, we also had a higher temperature last year than compared to the previous years, and also because of that, we also had a higher biogenic VOC emissions. This slide shows the blue line indicates blue bar chart indicates biogenic emissions in 2017, and orange color indicates the 2020 biogenic emissions. And also blue dotted line indicates temperatures in 2017, and the orange dotted line indicates 2020 temperatures. Actually, I don't have 2019 biogenic emission data yet, so I borrowed 2017 biogenic emission calculations we developed and compared these emissions to the biogenic emissions in 2020. As we can see, in 2020, the generally temperature was higher than the prior year, especially in this slide, 2017, except June. June is 2017 temperature was higher, but generally, this 2020 ozone season, we had higher temperatures. As a result, as you can see in the bar charts, we have much higher biogenic emissions. This also contributed to ozone in Maricopa ozone nonattainment area in 2020. Next slide, please. Yeah, in order to understand air pollution transport to Maricopa nonattainment area, let's look at this wind field data here. Actually, left side figure indicates early summer. Early summer means April and June and the beginning of July, and monsoon season. Monsoon season start from middle of July through the September. So in the left side, as you can see, strong winds are blowing from west California to Maricopa County. Actually, the arrow is a little bit moved down, but anyway, strong winds are blowing from California and north west California to Maricopa County. But during the monsoon season, you can see the obvious difference. Mexico, the winds, actually, the strong winds blowing from Mexico, affect the Maricopa County, and the wind blowing from Mexico blocks strong wind from west and north California. So because of that, early summer we had higher California and northwest California transport to Maricopa County impact, ozone impact. But during the monsoon season, we can see because of Mexico, the air pollution, more impact on the Maricopa County. Also, wind blowing from Mexico blocks the wind blowing from California. So because of that, during monsoon season, we have a much less California air pollution transport impact in Maricopa County. And also, wind is much stronger because wind blowing from Mexico blocks California winds. So during monsoon season, wind is much lower and stagnant. So because of that, local air pollution can be more easily accumulated and affect ozone concentration in Maricopa non-attainment area. Okay, next slide, please. Next slide, please. Next slide. Oh, okay, thank you. Yeah, based on this wind pattern understanding, let's look at the man-made emission impact on ozone and North Phoenix monitor. Let's look at the left side bar chart. This is Maricopa County's entire man-made emission impact on ozone concentration, North Phoenix monitoring site. Left side, bar indicates April ozone impact, and orange color is May ozone impact. As you can see, early summer, entire man-made emissions from Maricopa County impact only 6 to 7 ppb ozone concentration. If you look at the yellow and blue, this is July and August ozone impact due to the man-made emissions from entire Maricopa County. We have much higher impacts, local emission impact on the Maricopa County's ozone concentrations. And let's move to the green block here. As you can see, early summer, the April and May, June, beginning of June, we have much higher California anthropogenic emission transport impact. But late June, which is during the monsoon season from mid-June to September, we got much higher Mexico man-made emission impact on ozone concentration in the Maricopa County, Maricopa ADA ozone non-attainment area. Okay, let's move to the next slide. Okay, I want to discuss about background, long range, background ozone precursor transport impact on ozone and North Phoenix monitor in 2017. Actually, this gives also idea how much background ozone and precursor impact on the Maricopa ozone non-attainment area. East is background transport from the Cuba and also the Florida and East Coast U.S. States background transport. And west and north is background transport from East Asia and Canada and most northern U.S. states background transport impact. And south is South American background transport impact. In the slide, it shows April and May, June. We have a very higher background transport impact from East Asia and Canada and the most northern U.S. states background transport. And also September, we also have high impacts. And July and August, background transport impact is much lowered. So because of that, local emissions will affect ozone concentrations in Maricopa County. So local emission, COVID-19 related emission reduction may affect much higher during this period. But unfortunately, in August, we had very high and extensive wildfire impact. So we couldn't get a much benefit related to COVID-19 emission reductions. Okay, let's move to next slide. Okay, this is a summary for ozone impact in 2020. Last year, 2020, we had COVID-19 affected man-made, industrial contraction of industry activities and emissions. So we expected much better air quality last year, but in reality, we didn't get much benefit from the COVID-19 related emission reductions. The reasons are East Asia air pollutant transport was higher in April and May 2020 than in 2019. And wildfires in August and September 2020 were much higher and much extensive. And also temperature and biogenic emissions were generally higher during the ozone season in 2020. And we also observed that California and the Northwest long-range air pollutant transport was predominant during the monsoon season, like April through early June, while the Mexico and air pollutant and low emission impact was higher during the monsoon season. So from this slide, we can see that early summer, it is very difficult to get significant ozone reductions related to COVID-19 related emission reductions. So that's the reason we have limited impacts of COVID-19 related emission reductions on ozone in Maricopa County. Next slide. Thank you. This is my last slide. If you have any questions, Matt and I will answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you. Are there any questions for this presentation?
So this is Mike Denby. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Good afternoon. I apologize for being late to the meeting. But the question I had was, are we pursuing, we being the larger we, any studies by MAG, EDQ, Maricopa County to find out more about this? You sound like you put together some interesting data points here, but I can't help but wonder whether collaborating with others like LA or Southern California may help us better define what the triggers really are. And maybe if we get ASU or some of the universities involved to crunch some of the data to better understand the various elements that trigger these precursors and the actual ozone, that might be more helpful to us. Any movement in that area?
Yeah, I agree. Especially ozone, many factors affecting, local ozone concentration, not only, local emissions. As we can see, the California, wind, critically affect California and East Asia, the ozone and ozone precursor transport to Maricopa County, and also terrain, also critically affect, directions and also, cost of air pollutant transport to Maricopa County. So, also, Maricopa County, we have, the mountains north side. So actually, barely impact on ozone is also, textbook style, impact in Maricopa County ozone, concentration. Actually, many other things affect ozone in Maricopa County. So just looking at the, emission change, as we understand, ozone is not the primary pollutant, it's secondary pollutant. Ozone is generated as results of chemical reactions. So because of that, ozone behavior is very difficult to predict. So yeah, I think I agree. Maybe we need some, the help from our other sources, outside sources, to much further investigate, ozone, transport impact, and especially as I discussed in early summer, local, man-made emission impact is a very limited impact on the ozone concentration. As a result, maybe the control measure is not very effective during the early summer. So many things we need to further investigate, especially ozone. Ozone is a difficult pollutant. We cannot predict easily.
Do we have any, thank you for the answer. I greatly appreciate that. Do we have any eyes on site that can, money available or research opportunities available? I mean, I don't know who would be the target. I would imagine ADQ has some money in air quality fee funds of some kind, but I don't know that anybody's talked with them about this.
For this question, Matt, can you answer this question?
Well, sure, Taiju. I can just add that we're always continually looking and studying ozone. We certainly search various studies that are occurring. Our modelers do a great job of keeping on top of the latest science. And so we continue to do that, continue to research. I know ADQ has discussed some different monitoring information that maybe in the future could give us some more information on chemical interactions or how ozone behaves in our region. So I'm sure there will be opportunities to continue to study this, and we'll continue to look out for those opportunities where it makes sense for us in our region, and continue to understand how ozone affects us moving forward.
Thank you both.
Thank you. Does anyone else have questions?
Hi, this is Martin Lucero with the City of Surprise. Just interesting comment. I know that in the back, we've been asked to kind of be aggressive on trying to come up with ways to be able to eliminate ozone as well as other pollutants that are within our control. But if this has come at a kind of time for us to learn or anything like that, is being able to kind of take a look at this and say, there's a limit to some of the things that we can control, and what the new standards that have come out and the new pressure for us to find innovative ways to kind of bring those things down. This would be a good background, I think, backstop for us to be able to kind of take a look and compare with, future proposals, and to be able to kind of see how other people will be able to take this background data from other parts of the country and kind of take a look at, what's truly in our control, and how we can approach this in the future when we're taking a look at, emissions reductions.
Yeah, thank you for your comment. We certainly have observed that as the standards have gotten tighter, we know that background ozone continually has more and more of effect because it becomes more and more a part of, we get closer to background as standards get tighter and tighter. So I appreciate your comment. We continue to see that the effect of background ozone, things like wildfires and transport have a very large effect on our region.
Hi, Kim Butler from Maricopa County Air Quality. I'll just kind of throw out here too that we're partnering with ASU and ADEQ right now as we're working on a couple studies that are going to be occurring this summer. If everything continues on the projection, one of them would be to do some VOC canister testing, and the other, ASU is really looking at NOx emissions and is going to put out some portable monitors all throughout the valley. So by the end of next summer, we should have even more information on sourcing and transport just within our own boundaries a little bit and some of that. So we're kind of excited to see that. And then there's some other studies and such that are going on that we're watching, just like you guys are doing, but we do have those two that are in process right now.
Great, thank you, Kim.
Yeah, this is Joe Martini with ADEQ, and I just wanted to make mention that we're engaged with ASU with their capstone group to help deploy and develop a machine model that would help us to better understand some of these interactions and some of the different dependencies that really go into ozone formation.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate that information as well.
All right, do we have any other questions? All right, thank you. We'll move on to agenda item number 7, which is the update on the 2022 Serious Area Particulate Plan for PM10 for the West Pinal County and Non-Attainment area. Matt Poppin from MAG will give that presentation.
Yes, thank you again, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. Yeah, we wanted to take this time to provide you an update on the extensive work that has been going on to prepare this serious area PM10 plan for the West Pinal County non-attainment area. We've been working with our air quality partners at Pinal County Air Quality Control District and ADEQ and ADOT to continue a group effort to bring in the information needed to complete this plan. We've been working on the 2017 base year inventory and selecting design days for modeling. So we're really making some progress on getting going on this. But what I really wanted to share with you today was an update from our consultant on work on the best available control measures and most stringent measures analysis. They've really done some very extensive work that I'm going to screen share with you here in a second on the comparison analysis. And before I pull that up, I want to remind you of the background of that. As a serious non-attainment area, we're required to have best available control measures in place. And those are defined as the maximum degree of emission reductions from a particulate source while considering technical and economic feasibility. So how you determine those is you scan the country largely, or areas that have been affected by PM10 emissions and pollution, to see what control measures are out there. And in addition to best available control measures, because our area will be applying for an extension of the attainment date, the current attainment date is December 31st, 2022, and we do know we will need to extend that in order to meet the standard. Part of an extension request is you also have to show that the area has most stringent measures, and those are defined as the most stringent measures included in the plan of any state or are achieved in practice in any state and also can be feasibly implemented. So what we had asked our consultant to do, Trinity Consultants, was to look at 10 areas, and I'll go ahead and start screen sharing here. Okay. To look at 10 areas and then compare what West Pinal has in place and what exists currently. And we did this by significant source category. So I'm going to go briefly through, there are 10 significant source categories. And I'm going to kind of go briefly through because there's a lot of information in here, but just show you how this comparison works and give you some background on this work that will, I think, be helpful for you to understand as we develop measures into the future for this plan. So I'm hoping everyone can see my screen sharing. I'll just check. Mr. Chair, can you see the screen share?
Yes.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll continue. So the way this works is, if you look at that first line, this is kind of a summary table. So we're looking at fugitive deaths from agricultural sources in this analysis. And within agricultural sources, there are several subcategories. So this particular sheet example shown here, we're looking at crop operations, so field crops, and the activity within crop operations that's being evaluated in this one is implementing it. When are controls required? So an important box to see here is that sort of box that's bolded and in yellow. And in this case, what we found is that West Pinal already appears to have the most stringent measure for when crop operations are required to be regulated. West Pinal has a threshold of 10 acres, which is either the strictest or is equal to the strictest in several other areas. And so the table below is how we made that comparison. We have the areas that we looked at. You see West Pinal County, Maricopa County, Coachella Valley, California, Los Angeles, South Coast Air Basin, California, East Kern County, which is Bakersfield area, and east of Bakersfield, Imperial Valley, San Joaquin Valley. And we also looked at, if you notice at the bottom here, Clark County, Nevada, Washoe County, Nevada, Owens Lake, California, and an area in Washington. But those areas currently did not have measures in place for this particular activity. So we note that there. So if you wanted to look through and see what does Coachella Valley require, you can look at this table and see what their requirements are. We've shaded the most stringent ones in green so that when reviewing this table, you can see these are the most stringent requirements. And so, but again, to highlight, this box in yellow would be what is the best available and or most stringent measures. I'll just scroll down a little bit here to give you another example. Crop operations, this one, again, we're seeing that West Pinal is similar. We scroll down to one where, okay. So that here is one where there may be differences. So this, again, we're still looking at agricultural sources. We're looking at crop operations. We're looking at the actual field operations. So the new measure or the description of the best available measure or most stringent would be to require implementation of at least 3 conservation management practices to control fugitive deaths from cropland activity. So in this case, when comparing the measures, it was found that Coachella Valley and South Coast had more stringent measures. So this would be the recommendation here or the description of what is the most stringent measure for this operation. All right, so I'm going to go to a couple other categories here quickly so you can get an idea. This one is, now we're looking at fugitive deaths from confined animal feeding operations. This is for cattle. Here, the recommendation, or sorry, not the recommendation, but the description of the strictest, of the most stringent measure available for this activity. And this activity is, how do you define which operations are subject to fugitive death rules? So in this case, the most stringent would be to tighten the definition from a minimum of 500 cattle down to 50. Coachella Valley and South Coast are most stringent. As you can see, they would be highlighted here in green as you go through the table. And you can see there's probably 5 areas or 6 areas down here that did not have measures comparable to compare with. Continuing on, we also separated these out by the confined animal feeding operations by type of operations. So this one is poultry. Again, here, this is a definition of when a poultry farm would be subject to regulation. This is going from a minimum of 25,000 eggs down to 3,300, 600 eggs. Let me keep going here. Similar, this is another comparison for pigs, for swine. Again, a definition tightening. And again, you can see some other one as we continue through these tables. Here's another, just as another example, increase the number of best management practices to be implemented from 1 to 2. So right now, 2 are required in Maricopa County. Only 1 is required in West Pinal. So to have the most stringent or best available, you would go from 1 to 2. Continue on here. Cleared areas. This was largely those areas that are affected by windblown dust. So what we're looking for here were measures where there were kind of your vacant areas that aren't specific. Are there any controls out there that would help in those areas? So the definition currently, West Pinal is as stringent as any other area. Let me see if I can pull up one where, okay, here's one that could be more stringent. In this case, what vacant lots would be subject to regulation? Maricopa County has a requirement of 0.1 acres, where the current in West Pinal is 1 acre. So again, the description of the best available or most stringent activity would be to go from 1 acre to 0.1 acres. Okay, forward here. Construction sites. There's this is a large category because there are several areas in the country that have controls on construction sites, and there's many activities within construction sites. And the regulations are very extensive, as you can see. So it takes a while to go through each of these regulations. But here, just as an example, these are stabilization requirements. This is expanding the drop ball test for stabilization requirements. Again, it appears that Maricopa County has stricter stabilization drop ball test requirements than what currently exists in West Pinal. So that's a description of the best available or most stringent measure for that activity. Dairies, this is similar to what I have shown you for the combined animal feeding operations. So here we have a definition, again, going from 150 down to 50 animals, and where that comes from, Coachella Valley and South Coast, along with increasing the number of best management practices from 1 to 2 for various operations as examples. Just want to keep going here so you can kind of see all the categories that are being looked at. Okay, paved road dust. So this is re-entrained dust that occur on paved road as you travel over it. The first one found here is in regard to stabilization of unpaved shoulder work and maintenance. So in this example, it was found that Clark County and San Joaquin Valley had more stringent measures requiring the stabilization and paving of shoulders next to paved roads. So description of the most stringent or best available measure would be to match those requirements that exist in those areas. I think I have 2 more here. Unpaved lots. This is particularly, we're looking at unpaved parking lots, so it's a little more specific than the vacant lots and the cleared areas shown earlier. Let me see where we have, okay, here's an example of a more stringent one. Strengthen existing standards to add 0% opacity at the fence line from the Clark County rule. So again, this one is where Clark County has a rule that visible emissions must be 0 at the fence line, as opposed to the current one in West Pinal. So that would be a stricter measure. And then I'll do one more category and open it up for any questions that you may have. This is fugitive dust from unpaved roads. This first one would be to expand the existing definition of unpaved roads to include alleys. Here we go, tighten when provisions for unpaved roads might apply. Currently, the provisions are having an annual daily trip of 150 per day, where the strictest that currently exists are 26 trips per day in San Joaquin Valley. So in San Joaquin Valley, they are controlling emissions from unpaved roads that have at least 26 vehicle trips per day, as opposed to West Pinal, what's at 150. So the goal of all of this comparison analysis is to synthesize and then come up with measures that may be included and suggested for inclusion in the PM10 plan. Some of the next steps that we are going to be doing, and the consultant will be doing, is to quantify the emission reductions associated if the measure was implemented. So, for example, in this example, we would quantify if the threshold for when you have to control dust from unpaved roads was lowered to 26 trips per day, what kind of emission benefits would that have for West Pinal Nonattainment area? Then also the consultant is also looking at the economic impact and feasibility of implementing these as well. So all of that information will ultimately be synthesized together in order to help form a suggested list of measures to be included in our plan. So those are the next steps that will be coming. But we wanted to show you the work, the really extensive work that has occurred to look at these significant sources of PM10 emissions in the West Pinal area and how they have been compared to try and find the most stringent and best available measures. I'll keep screen share up just for a little bit in case people have questions, but then I'll stop here in a second. So I will open it up to any questions at this point.
Thanks, Matt. Are there any questions?
Yes, this is Kristen Watt with Salt River Project. Matt, you mentioned applying for an extension request for the attainment date. Is there a date in which you have to apply for that extension?
It will be in the request for an extension will be a part of the plan when we submit the plan. So our plan is due in January 2022. So we will include it as part of the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Great. Any other questions?
Matt, this is Beverly from ADA. I had a question in regards to the most stringent measures requirement for Pinal County SIP, in that do these control comparisons have to come from an approved non-attainment area plan? I ask because I know California has kind of their own state non-attainment areas and they're more stricter than the federal. And I'm just curious on if we need to start looking at controls that maybe are not adopted in a federal SIP.
The requirement, as it's stated, is that most stringent measures are included in the plan of any state or are achieved in practice in any state. So the measure does not necessarily have to be a part of an air quality plan. Now, the reason why we looked at these areas, though, is these are areas that are either currently classified as a serious PM10 non-attainment area or were formerly classified as a serious PM10 non-attainment area and are now maintenance areas. So these are where you're most likely to find the most stringent measures, because these areas have had to implement them in order to try and meet the PM10 standard. It is possible that there could be measures out there that are outside of these areas. We'll continue to look for those, but in general, you would expect that the most stringent measures would be included in these areas, particularly because these are the areas that are trying to meet the PM10 standard.
Any additional questions for Matt? All right, hearing none, thanks, Matt. We'll move on to agenda item number 8, which is the EPA proposed approval and proposed disapproval of the West Pinal County Moderate Area Plan, PM10 plan. Lindy Bauer from MAG will give that presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. We wanted to notify the committee that on January 8th of 2021, the Environmental Protection Agency published a proposed rule to approve in part and disapprove in part the 2015 West Pinal Moderate Area PM10 plan that was prepared by the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality. Now, in essence, EPA is proposing to approve the base year 2008 emissions inventory for direct PM10 and to disapprove the remaining elements of the West Pinal County PM10 plan. In the notice, EPA is proposing disapproval of the precursor demonstration, reasonably available control measures, reasonably available control technology analysis, the modeled attainment demonstration, reasonable further progress demonstration, quantitative milestones, contingency measure, and the motor vehicle emissions budget. We wanted to point out that in this notice, EPA indicates that if they finalize the disapproval of the plan, right now it's proposed, but if they finalize it, upon the effective date of that final rule, the area, meaning the non-attainment area in West Pinal, PM10, would be subject to a conformity freeze under the Transportation Conformity Rule. This means that no transportation project outside of the first 4 years of the currently conforming transportation plan and transportation improvement program may be found to conform until a new PM10 plan is submitted, EPA finds the submitted motor vehicle emission budget adequate, or EPA approves the new PM10 plan and conformity to that new plan is determined. Conformity is very important. You need conformity on your transportation improvement programs and transportation plans in order to allow transportation projects to proceed. So we wanted to point that out to the committee. So this would take effect right away if EPA goes final with the disapproval. EPA also notes that as a result of the final disapproval action, if EPA has to impose the highway sanctions 2 years from the effective date, the conformity status on the transportation plan and transportation improvement program would lapse on that day, and no new transportation plan, transportation improvement program, or project may be found to conform until a new PM10 plan is submitted and conformity to that plan is determined. So we have been working with our air quality planning partner agencies, the Arizona Department of Environmental Quality, Arizona Department of Transportation, Pinal County Air Quality Control District, and Sun Corridor Metropolitan Planning Organization on the new Sirius Area Plan. And EPA indicates in the notice that the Sirius Area Plan, because the requirements are more stringent, if that plan comes in and meets the requirements, then it could take care of some of these issues with the moderate plan. But in the meantime, if EPA does go final with the disapproval, there would be a conformity freeze. I wanted to let the committee know that we are still researching to find the best solutions. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Lindy. Are there any questions? All right, I don't hear anyone chiming in, so we'll move on to agenda item number 9, which is our tentative meeting schedule for the MAG Air Quality Technical Advisory Committee. And Lindy will comment on that.
Thank you very much. This is just very brief. We wanted to give you the tentative meeting schedule and let you know it's for January through December of 2021. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Agenda item number 10 would be a request for future agenda items. Any topics or issues of interest that the Air Quality Technical Advisory Committee would like to have considered for discussion at a future meeting should be submitted either now or in the next coming days. And our next meeting is tentatively scheduled for Thursday, February 25th, 2021. Does anyone have any issues or items for a future agenda item at this time? All right, I do not hear any. Again, if you have some, just let us know. And with that, our last item is the adjournment of the meeting. Our business is now concluded. I thank everyone for attending, and I'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you.
Bye.